All right, welcome back everybody. My name is Dustin, and in the last video, we added in the scene hierarchy display, and we also added in the ability to add new game object to the scene and add new components to that game object. Which is all great. However, we can't really see any of our scenes in the actual scene runtime. So right now, we're just currently playing this here, the little platformer we're working on, but we don't have any of these levels in the level editor. This level was created using tiled, which is great, but we want to be able to do this all in our game engine. So the goal for this day is to actually copy all of our game objects and tile map to the scene to play, okay? So I'm going to try to make this a quick video. So rather than automatically running the platformer test game, we're going to comment that out and then try to run the currently loaded scene. All right, so let's get into it. Okay, so the first thing I want to do here is actually open up our scene object. So go into your editor, and then you want to go to source, editor, scene object, and scene object.cpp. So as you see here, we already have this copy scene to runtime function. We made this before because that was one of the goals previously. So now let's actually start looking into that. So we control KO, take us over, and we have this function right here. Okay, so inside of this function, the first thing that we're going to want to do is get a reference to both of the registries. So we want to go auto reference, and we'll call this register to copy, or registry to copy, is equal to mRegistry.getRegistry. Cool. And then auto reference runtime registry. And that's equal to mRuntime registry get registry. Awesome. Now that we have both the registries, we're going to want to loop through all of the entities that we want to copy. Create a new entity in the runtime registry, and then copy all the components from that current entity that we want to copy to the new entity in the runtime. So to do that, we can go for auto entity. We can call this entity to copy. There, that's easier to understand. And then we say registry to copy dot view entt entity. This will return all of our entities to us. All the entities that are in the registry will be returned in this view. And then we can exclude them. We go entt exclude. We're going to want to exclude the script component because we don't need to copy that one over. So script component. Okay. Now that's not going to work because we need to include our components, and we can do that up here. So include core ECS components, all components .h. Cool. And let's go down. Oh, and we got to do one more thing here. Up here, we can go using namespace Scion core ECS. Now inside of this, the first thing I want to do is create a new entity in the runtime registry. Auto, or you can go entt entity, new entity, entity is equal to mRuntime registry create entity. Now that we have our new entity, we're going to want to actually loop through all of the storages of the registry that we want to copy. This will give us access to all of the components that are in the registry. And then we can take those components and copy them to the new entity. Okay, so we can say copy the components of the entity to the new entity. Cool. Then we can go for auto ID storage, and it's registry to copy dot storage. The storage function will return all of the storages for us, and then we can go through them. And we go in here, so we have our storage, and then we have the ID type of that storage. Okay. Now what I want to do in here is see if the entity is in there. So we want to say if not storage dot contains the entity to copy, then we're just going to want to continue. Because if it doesn't have that entity, we don't care about this storage, okay? We only want to copy components that the entity has. Like before, we're going to want to use the invoke meta function utility to copy the components. But for that, we're going to have to create a new meta function for copying them, and we'll do that in our entity.h and entity.inl. So let's do that right now. Go to our Scion core, include, and ECS, entity.h, entity.inl. And we'll go here. Let's go down to the bottom. And right here where we're saying remove component, we can just copy this and paste it in and change this to copy component. Okay, we're gonna have to change this here. Let's actually send in the entity that we want to copy. Entity reference, entity to copy, and then entity reference, entity that copies. Or you can name it whatever you want. And let's create this function. And that's where we want to create it in copyComponent.inl. So now that we have this function, what we want to do first is go Scion assert. We're going to want to assert to make sure that the entity to copy has the component that we're trying to get. So we need to use the assert here. So for that, we want to include the logger. Okay. So we have our assert, and I want to say entity to copy dot has component t component. I want to say the entity must have the specified component. Cool. So if we make it here, we know that we have the component in question that we want to copy. So all we need to do is go const auto reference component is equal to entity to copy get component t component. Okay. And then we take the entity that copies and add this component. So we go return entity that copies, add component, t component, and then pass in the component. Cool. And if we go to add component here, that's just going to in place the component for us. Okay. All right. And that should work for us. Now this one right here, because of the way that we did the entity, this should already have its own registry that it is in. Okay. So we're passing in the entity, but it also passes in its registry with it. So we don't have to worry about the registry there. All we have to do now is copy this line down and add it into our meta function here. So here, copy component. And we want to change this here to copy component. Cool. So that should be it there. Now let's quickly build this to make sure it still works. Awesome. So the rebuild succeeded. So let's go back to our sceneObject.cpp, and we're going to have to add in our meta utilities. So include core ECS meta utilities.h. And before we use the meta utilities, it does use the ENTT literals. So we're going to want to go using ENTT literals. Using namespace ENTT literals. And then down here, we can invoke our meta function. Okay, so now we want to copy the component from the entity copy to our new entity. And we do that by going Scion core utils, invoke meta function. And this takes in the ID type, and that's what this is right here. This is your ENTT ID type, so we just pass in the ID type. It takes in the function, and that's copy component underscore HS. Then it takes in our variables. All we want to do here is actually pass in these registries. So we don't even really need this runtime registry. We can actually get rid of that. Take this. We don't even need that. We can go here and go entity. And this takes in the M registry and the entity to copy. And then we have to send in the other entity. It's entity, and this takes in M runtime registry and the new entity. Cool, and that's it. That should work for us. Control KD. Yeah, we don't even need this here. We can remove this. And that should work for us. So what we want to do now is actually do the copying. We're not actually calling this yet. So in our scene display, let's go to that real quick. So in the editor, displays, scene display.cpp, and then down here in our load scene, before we grab the runtime registry, let's actually do the copy. So we can go t current scene, copy scene to runtime. And that should do all of the copying for us. Let's actually quickly go back to this. Now we have this clear runtime scene. We should be doing that as well. So we can go M runtime registry, and we want to clear registry. Cool. That should clear the runtime scene for us. Go back to our scene display, and let's take a little look here. So this is another thing. So our scripting system, we're still passing in the registry as a reference, so as a member variable. So we didn't remove that yet. We don't want to have to do this. We want to have it so we pass in the registry to the update functions or any function that is necessary. So let's go into this here. And so we have our registry here. We want to actually remove this member variable. We don't need it anymore. And take this from the constructor and move this into the load script. We're going to need it there. We're going to need it in the update, and we're going to need it in the render function as well. We can remove this as well and just add our namespace in. So namespace, Scion, core, ECS, and then we can go class, registry. Cool. So let's go to scripting system.cpp. So control KO. And since we already have the main registry here, we don't have to include it. And we can start removing these. We can remove this. Remove this, no longer needed. This here. And the load main script, we can go paste this in. And in the update function, paste that in. And the render, paste that in as well. Cool. All right. So we still have an issue here. Everywhere where we use the M registry, we have to get rid of that. So we want to go Control H. I want to go M registry. So everywhere that says M registry, we want to replace that with just registry because we're going to be passing that in to the functions, okay? So then we go Alt A, that should replace all occurrences. Cool, that's replaced now. And let's just build this quickly. And we know this should fail because we have places where we're actually passing the registry in or we're not passing it in. So right here in the main script here, we actually now need to pass this runtime registry in. So we're passing that in, okay? And up here, where we're creating the scripting system, we can actually remove this. We don't need that anymore. And we're not going to have this in the runtime registry. We can actually take this context and put it into the main registry. It doesn't have to be done here anymore. We can just grab it from the main registry. I'll just leave that up for a challenge for you guys, or we can just leave it in as is. Okay, and we'll just leave it in for now. All right, so where else? So we got a couple more errors. Down here in the update function, we actually have to pass the runtime registry in as well. And then let's see our unload, because we want to make sure that we're clearing the registry as well. So it looks like we're already clearing the runtime registry here. You could use the scene to do that, or just do it like this. And we're also going to have to remove the context of the script system. So we can do this, and it's std shared pointer scripting system. Cool. So that should work for us. I don't think I'm missing anything. So let's try to build. All right, so our build succeeded. That's great. So now we actually want to try this. So let's run it and see if it works. Cool. So we don't have anything in our scene hierarchy. So let's load a scene real fast. Because right now we still have to load our assets this way. We're loading our assets through our scripts. We don't want to do, eventually we're going to want to change that. We're going to want to be able to go to our assets and just add and like right click here and add a new asset, a new texture or whatever. We also want to have a content browser where we can just drag files in and drop them that will be copied into our content browser for our local project. But we're not there yet. We'll get to that soon. So for now, we still need to add them in by running the script, or we could hard code them in if we like. But right now it just runs the script. Right now we have that. And the problem is we're still playing the game and we don't want to do that. So we want to actually make changes to this. Okay, so let's pause it. Let's not shut it down so we can check it out. So let's go into our code real fast. So say we go to this main.lua here and we start making changes, right? So if we go to our assets, scripts, and go to this main.lua. If we change this, it's not going to have any effect right now because these files were copied over. When we compiled it, it copied it over to this location, win-x64 debug. So these files aren't what we're looking at here. This is actually the exe is that what we want to see. All right, so this is our Scion2D here. So what we want to look at is this build folder and MSVC debug, this one right here. And then this binary here. These are the assets we need to adjust because this is what we would be running right now. Okay, so it's looking at these files. So if we want to make any adjustments to the scripts and actually see it in the game while we're debugging, we need to do it to those scripts. And I can show you right now. So if I go to this file, this is the one that's actually in our project folder here. And let's say I do anything to it. It won't make any changes. It'll still run. So let's try to comment this out. And if I go down here and comment it out, comment this out as well. If I go back to the game and I go play, it's still going to run the scripts because the scripts have already been copied over, right? So what we can do is go into our assets here, go into these scripts and go to this main.lua. And I'm just going to open this in Notepad++. Okay. And we can make our changes here. So I don't want this to run anymore because I've already got my assets loaded in. So we can actually just comment this out now. Down here, comment this out. And comment this out. Or leave this here. This says if game stack, leave those. Those don't need to, we don't have to worry about that because we're doing a check. So if this doesn't exist, it won't do that. Then I can say S2D log running new changes. Okay, that's just to run it, see that we got these changes in. Let's keep this going. So let's stop this and run it. See, it shows nothing. Check our logs and go back to the top, running new changes. Awesome, that's exactly what I want to see. So clear that, running new changes. Cool, so we're not actually loading that stuff in anymore. We're going to be copying things in to the runtime. All right, so we already have our assets loaded because we were running the scripts. So let's actually take our hill tiles and just make something really fast. Our tiles won't let us create a tile unless we have a layer. So we need to make a new layer. I'll just call this the platform. Cool. And now I should be able to create a new layer. Cool. Let's create this platform. The colliders do work. We don't need to worry about that right now. So let's change this here and run it. Just create some type of platform. It doesn't matter. Cool. Paste this here. And now let's just make sure that this works. So what we'll do, go to our scene and hit play. And it failed, so we want to see why. So we have an issue here. We must have forgot to add a component. So here, yeah, so it's looking for a type that doesn't exist in our meta. So let's go to the call stack, and go to copy scene from runtime. And we'll see what the storage is. What storage is this? This is the tile component. Okay, so we must not have registered the tile component. So let's stop this, go to our core, because we moved this into our core utilities, core engine data. And then down here, I created this register meta functions. So if I go Control K O, register meta functions, and we just want to make a new one. And we call this the tile component. And we're going to want to do that for this one as well. Tile component. Cool. And let's run it again. Okay, cool. So let's add our scene. And it's not going to play anything, but we need those assets to be loaded in so we can make something. So we actually have to change our scene again. So here, want to reload it? Yes. So this is, see how this all got copied over? We want to just put a space there, get this all in. I don't care about the G stack, that could stay. Go back into here, play. This will give us our assets. Awesome. So we got our assets loaded. Go back into the script, comment it out again, and put in our comment. S2D log running new changes. Go back in, we're still running, like we haven't shut this off yet. Go to our logs, clear the logs, and run it. Awesome. So we know that's working. Cool. Clear this, go to our tile map editor again, and let's quickly make, so we have hill tiles. Got to make our layer. Add layer. Platform. Cool. And just add this here. Add a few more. Doesn't have to be perfect, because this is all for testing. Cool. All right, so now I want to see if this loads our platform here. Awesome, and it loaded the platform just how I wanted to see it. Great. So let's stop this. So we know it's loading in the tile sets, right? So what I want to do now is add a game object. So go here, add new game object, and go to object details, and we want to add a sprite component. Cool, sprite. And texture, we'll just use the player. And you see the players up there, so let's go 32 by 32. And I want to bring the player down right about here. So let's go to our tile details and see where that is. So that's about 128, 384. If you see these numbers over here, this is moving with our tile. So 128, 384. Cool. Object details, transform, 128, 384. So it's a bit low and the layer is behind. So let's go to the layer and up it one. So now we're in front. And let's bring this up right here. So we just go minus. Up is actually negative. Cool. 372. Cool. So now when I go to the scene, this guy should be copied over as well. Awesome. There's our guy. So this is actually a full-on copy of this here. So if I take this and move this guy way over to the side here, these changes aren't taking effect in the scene. So if I go over to the scene, he should still be in the same spot he was at because it was just a copy, right? But if I stop the scene and reload it, see, he's moved. So it's copying and getting rid of the stuff exactly the way we want it. Cool. That's it for this video. There is a little bit of a challenge. So the challenge is to don't worry about collisions or anything, but make a few game objects on the side, some tiles, and in your main script. So if you go to your main script, try to grab the player and move them around. Now, we've already kind of gone over this before. You just got to use your inputs and grab the player and move the transform component, or do something like that, or give it a rigid body, or do an update function, something like that. You guys try to figure that out. That's a little challenge for you. Give it a shot, see if you can do that. Also, make sure you like and subscribe if you haven't done so already, and take it easy.